Welcome in to the Fatheads Eyewear Studios for the first inaugural episode. That's repetitive, baby. But whatever. Of Unverified. I'm David Land. That's Tony Donohue. We're here, and we're going to be talking all sorts of things tonight. We're going to be talking the Daytona 500. We're going to be talking about some of the drivers that we feel maybe were a little bit disrespected throughout Speed Week, or Speed Couple of Days, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be talking a little bit more and getting a little more into depth about the change in the presidency of IndyCar. I think we need to talk about Jay Fry a little bit more and the impact that, or I guess the void that he's going to leave at IndyCar. And we're even going to get into some more IndyCar stuff. We're going to talk about a potential driver that might be running into some financial difficulties, as well as the Indy 500 entry list, because I know this guy over here made a pretty bold prediction about what we might see on that entry list, and things might have changed, so stay tuned for that. But Tony, I want to start by talking about the name of our show. I think this is going to be the most appropriate place to begin, because I called it, I sent you this name pretty early on in the process of us talking about this show, and you were like, "Are you sure?" And we did go back and forth about it a little bit, but I think it works. Because right now in racing, I think there's a really interesting thing going on in the media. You have the old established, media, many of whom do a great job. Don't want to say anything bad about them. But you also have an up-and-coming crop of media personalities and people who are outside of the established, normal way that people have consumed racing media forever. And we are very much that. And there used to be a thing on Twitter, not anymore because it's now X, but there used to be a check mark, and you used to be verified or unverified. And we have always fallen into the unverified category. So here we are, and just kind of talk about that, talk about the show and why you think it's so important for us to kind of have this platform, have this show to be able to do this.
Yeah, first and foremost, happy to be there. I'm excited to be a part of this. It's something you and I have been discussing on road trips to places like Iowa and Milwaukee. We've gotten to know each other, became good friends over the last couple of years. We're going to introduce Kyle, our producer, as well, who we've all gotten to know as well. But yeah, Unverified. We do have some great sources in the paddock, and we appreciate and respect those relationships. But if we get something, we don't have to get verified, so to speak, by an editor, by somebody who is, for lack of a better term, over our shoulder going, I don't know about that. And look, we get things that we don't put out there. We get things like, that seems a little bit too untrue. Maybe that's not going to happen. But that's where the show came up. We got a great logo from our friend Josh Day, and I'm excited to be here. There is this level of journalism that everybody wants to talk about, and then there's this new wave, and we see it every day where, different types of avenues, podcasts, streams, things like this. For me, I have just learned from my years in radio, just put things on X. I probably tweet too much. You guys know this. Anybody who's listening right now or follows me and watching this knows that I probably tweet way too much. So, but it's something that I think IndyCar needs. Motorsports in general needs a platform like this where we're going to interact throughout the show every Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time here on Unverified's YouTube channel. We're going to interact. We're going to give you our opinions. We're going to talk racing. We're going to talk about our experiences race weekends-wise. We're going to give you opinions. You're not going to agree with us a lot of the time. Some of the times you will. But that's the general discussion that we're looking for, is talking about the things that maybe are uncomfortable for other people to talk about. And I think, what I really learned last year between you and I is just between these media bullpen sessions and talking to drivers, just the respect that we have for the drivers and the level of respect they have for what we are doing to cover IndyCar, motorsports in general, the Indianapolis 500, and moving those entities forward. And we also just love it. We love racing, and we love to follow it. And I'm looking forward to 2025 being a huge year with Fox coming in, with what we're doing here with this show, and ultimately crowning another champion at the Indianapolis 500.
And I think you made a great point. I think that's what this show is really going to be about, is that you have a platform, you have a couple different platforms. You have your X account, you have the Tony D podcast. Obviously, I have my YouTube channel.
I have a Facebook, you don't.
And a Facebook. I do have a Facebook. I do have a Facebook page,
Sure.
Believe it or not. I just don't post in those groups too much. But you look at what we do throughout the week, and we do different things. I mean, we end up in the same places, but we talk to different people. We have different sources. We have all these different things. What's going to be cool about this show is we're going to kind of have a shared experience on the show, and we'll be able to talk through some of these, rumors or, unverified sources, right? Yes. And hopefully, I think that will help the viewers throughout racing to kind of get a general sense of what's going on, perhaps before things actually happen, because it's kind of surprising to think about so many of the things that we've talked about. Some things come to fruition, some things don't, but how early sometimes you hear about some of these things. So we're hoping that this show will be a place that you guys, the viewers, will be able to kind of get some of that inside information early. You mentioned it. We got a third member of this show. He's our producer. He's our friend. It's Kyle Cuthbertson. And Kyle is going to be kind of your voice, your eyes, your ears into the show, because we do want it to be interactive as well. We want you to be involved, and we want to reward you for tuning in live. Kyle, welcome to the show. Kind of tell me about what your perspective in this show is going to be, and kind of what's going on in the chat right now.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the young guy of the three of us. I'm
Zoomer.
Yeah, I'm probably about 10 years younger than, almost 10 than David. Definitely.
I'm old.
He's
Tony's old.
Old fart.
Yeah, I'll be looking at the chat, as well as giving these guys crap a lot of the time, because I disagree with a lot of what they say, or I at least have a different perspective. That's actually the beauty, is I actually tend to agree with these two a lot, but, I'm a social media manager by heart and by what I do in my job, and I'm chronically online, probably a bit more than these guys.
Which, that's crazy, because I'm online a lot.
David's online a lot. But yeah, I'll be reading the chat. We're in both the Unverified channel tonight and David's channel. So there were people asking whether they should watch it on Unverified or David. Tonight it really doesn't matter, but in the future it's only going to be on the Unverified account. So make sure you go on to the Unverified channel and subscribe there. But yeah, new studio, first time using it. It'll only get better from here. So
yeah, and I think, look, we're going to be every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We have some big things to announce moving forward once we get closer to the month of May. And it's crazy that St. Pete, we're a week away from kind of traveling down there, those type of things. But just to go back to the Unverified thing, David, I think you'll agree with me because we've talked about this before. We live in a world where everybody is just chomping at the bits to make sure if you're wrong, you hear about it, and to make sure if they don't like your opinion. We don't mind a difference of opinions on this show. David and I have become friends, and I'm telling you this, we couldn't be further apart when it comes to personalities. And we'll tell these stories because we go on road trips together to travel to these races. And we're going to be open, we're going to be personable, we're going to talk about the things that we like, dislike. We hope you do as well, and interact in the chat. But, we're two personalities that couldn't be any more different, really.
Yep.
But, we both can agree on a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that I'll say to David, and he's like, well, did you ever think about it this way, and what about this? And there's a lot of things that David will say, hey, maybe this is happening. I said, well, what about this? And so it's almost a full circle of discussing topics in racing, topics in life, and then in around IndyCar when we're at races. So I'm excited to kick this thing off. We've got an awesome studio here in the Fathead Studio. And we look good, we feel good, and we're ready to wave the green flag on IndyCar. And as we know, Daytona, whatever the crapshoot that was on Sunday evening. Give me your favorite time.
Noon. The race was supposed to, by the way, advertise as a 1:30 start. They moved it up, but then our commander-in-chief decided he needed to take, a full Indy 500 qualifying attempts around the racetrack, and
he couldn't get the speaker to work. It seemed like
that's right.
They're waiting on that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Just to hear him calling you people.
Well, let me say this. Here's what's so funny, and not just the Trump thing, but anytime it seems like ever since, I think Sam Posey cursed this way back in the 1986 Indy 500.
And if anybody knows, it would be you. This guy, this is the building that they built the 1982 winner.
Well, so there's this. Well, this is the old Patrick Racing shop. There's a little bit of inside baseball right there. Yes. 3 Indy 500 winners came out of the shop. Pretty cool. I feel pretty cool about that. There might be the ghost of Gordon Johncock, even though Gordy's still with us, hanging over me. But the thing about to tie into the Patrick Racing thing, this two-way radio stuff with the booth and the race car drivers has been a thing since the 80s. But coming to the last restart in 1986, and Kyle liked this because it worked out in his favor, but Kevin Kogan was leading the Indianapolis 500, and ABC Sports, it was I think their first live broadcast. They got the bright idea, we're going to call the leader of the Indy 500 as he's coming to the last restart, and he's in the short chute, like ready to take the restart, and Sam Posey's like, Kevin, this is a really big moment in your career. What do you think? And Kevin just goes over the radio, really polite, but he's like, Sam, I'll talk to you after the checkered flag. And then he goes out there and he takes the restart, almost biffs it off of 4. Bobby Rahal passes him, and Bobby Rahal goes on to win his only Indy 500. So they've never figured out this like live radio to the television. And of course, it struck President Trump.
And then 10, 12 years later, after the 500 in 98, 97 and 99, remember they go to Lion Dyke and he's upshifting and he drops a what the F.
Yep.
And then 99, they're on board with Robbie Gordon, and he runs out of fuel and yells F. And then a lap later, Kenny Brack's yelling, was that the F in checkered? So
yelling at
they still haven't figured it out.
Well, yeah, they probably should never, ever do, like, hot radios over because you know this. You spot, Tony, right?
Yes.
Like, you say some pretty off-the-wall stuff when you're on those radios in the heat of battle. It's just one of those things that you probably shouldn't do. The heat of battle, I think, completely describes the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, because I didn't do a video about it this year. I usually do a video about the Daytona 500, but this year...
You probably could have taken last year's video and just ran it back.
Well, that's for sure. I kind of feel like that way about the 2023 Indy 500, actually. But I don't get the Daytona 500 anymore. I think this race has completely broken me. Like, 2023 is the first year where I said, what are we doing? Because between the stage racing taking away the green flag pit stops, which in any 500-mile race, whether it's stock cars, Indy cars, whatever, the green flag pit stops are incredibly important to kind of sort the field out, because it's not just the best car or the best driver. Yeah. You also got to find out who the best pit crew is, who has the best strategy. All of these factors have kind of been removed from Daytona. And not only that, the times where there looked like there were going to be green flag pit stops, NASCAR threw a debris caution.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Whether it was
there a Busch Light can on the backstretch?
There might have been a Busch Light can. You never know. But the thing that I can't understand about this right now is what are we watching? Like, why are we invested in a 500-mile race that has really no meaning up until the last caution in the last stage? Because we saw so much fuel saving throughout the Daytona 500, and it looks spectacular on television. It's 3 abreast for 10 or 12 rows deep, but that doesn't mean anything because they're not really racing. Yeah. And I know back in our day, I hate to say this because I need to get my walker out, but the Daytona 500 didn't used to be this way. No. In fact, you go back to like 2007, which is a race that I think a lot of people remember fondly, but if you watch the whole thing, they're not all in a wad the entire time. They're just in a wad on the last restart. So I don't know, Tony, what's your perspective? I mean, did you see the same thing I was seeing watching Daytona?
You look at, I got an invite to do a fantasy app of who to pick, and it's like you pick whoever gets the luckiest. I mean, it's not the best driver. I mean, although William Byron is a great driver, has won the last 2 Daytona 500s, it's who gets the luckiest, right? It's who can get through that crash, who can get through poor Ryan Preece once again flying through the air. And I tweeted it immediately. I tweeted after the ARCA race on Saturday. Tony Stewart's quote from, 10, 12 years ago about, we didn't wreck enough cars, and I don't feel good unless we spend $150,000 per car on crash damage. I mean, I was texting with Catherine before the ARCA race, and I said, I would just go to the bottom and go to the back. I mean, ARCA, we know they're going to wreck, okay? But just go to the bottom and just hang loose. They're all going to wreck in front of you. As long as you get through it, you're probably going to have a chance at the top 10. A.K.A. Helio Castroneves, who was involved in crashes and still finished well in the ARCA race, which we'll get to him in a minute. I don't know. I don't know what fixes it. I'm not as technically smart as you are when it comes to that type of stuff, but, you're 9th coming to the line, you're 6th heading down the backstretch, and they all just wreck in front of you. And, there used to be a famous TikTok and a famous Instagram reel where they would play the music from Titanic. You're here, there's nothing I fear. It's like, that was William Byron driving down the backstretch, going around all these drivers to win. And then, now all of a sudden we're going to let them run back to the line, which they didn't do in the duels last Thursday.
That was unbelievable.
So it's all behind you guys, because that wasn't even the first wreck of the last lap. Riley Herbst went through the infield. Yep. I think he saved it. Yep. He was having a great run as a rookie. And then, you're going, okay, are they going to race back to the line? Because Reddick was coming. And I was like, is Byron going to win it? Oh, there's Jimmy running third in the Shaq Daddy car. Is he going to be able to do it? So, good for William Byron. I mean, I'm never going to be mad when the 24 car wins as a longtime Jeff Gordon fan. But I don't know. I really don't know. I promise I'm never going to ever bet on that race again because there's just no reason to. It's an absolute crapshoot. Absolute crapshoot.
I think the saddest thing to me was William Byron actually broke a record this year. He became the youngest driver to make it to 2 Daytona 500 wins. And who did he beat? Jeff Gordon in the 24 car.
Oh, no.
But then you look at that, and you look at Byron's 2 wins in this era, and you look at Jeff's, and it's like, well, he beat the record, right? But like, which one's more impressive? I think it's Jeff off the racing, but like, honestly, like, it just made me sad.
I'm not here to rip on anybody because a lot of these drivers I like, but how many drivers in the last 5 to 10 years have won the Daytona 500 and really hadn't won anywhere else? Or
most of them.
Yeah. So look, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's a good restrictor plate racer, but he hasn't won anywhere else. Austin Cindric, I think he's only won a Gateway outside of this, right?
Yep.
It was like a lot. I forgot who said it after the race, but a lot of those drivers were just in a hurry to wreck. I mean, I thought Christopher Bell had a great chance to win that race, and Cole Custer, who, I guess
caused multiple accidents,
probably has a ride because his dad's best friend with Gene Haas, and coming from an IndyCar world, we know that a lot of money comes from family, and that puts you in a car, as everybody well knows. But man, it was just like, but it always seems to be Logano's involved in something, Stenhouse is involved in something. Like,
we had the meeting of the minds because Logano and Stenhouse caused the first big one, right? It's always those two.
It's easier to predict who's going to start a crash and wind up in the garage than it is to win the race. At the restrictor plates.
The way I described it on Twitter is, and I stand by this. I actually feel more strongly about it now than I did when I tweeted it. Mm-hmm. This Daytona 500, more than it has in the past, and I understand in the past it just felt like a lottery, but this one was a true lottery because you have a driver coming across the start-finish line 9th, and it wasn't like William Byron passed. It would be one thing if he just had a huge monster run and passed 9 cars and wins the Daytona 500. Or even if a couple of cars crashed in front of him and he passed 7, right? Yeah. But that was not what happened. It was the 2 drivers who I think deserved to win the race, which were Denny Hamlin and Austin Cindric, getting bowled over from behind because he had a land rush of idiots just getting put. And that, you mentioned what would it take to fix the Daytona 500. And I don't mean fix in like a Riggett sense. They try the best to do that every year. But I think to actually fix the racing at Daytona, you've got to get it to the point where I don't think the pushing is. I think the pushing needs to be out of restrictor plate racing or super speedway racing, because I think that's really where the problem is. Back when we started watching NASCAR, you could push if you were skilled.
Yeah.
Because the bumpers didn't line up all that well, and there was space underneath the bumper where you could get underneath somebody and, as we used to call, jack him up, right, and wreck him.
Yep.
Well, now it's different because the way you wreck somebody is quite literally run through them, like Cole Custer did to Christopher Bell, right? But those are the kind of pushes that win you the Daytona 500 now. Yeah. We saw it with Denny a couple of years ago when Ryan Newman had that tremendous accident. He pushed, I think it was Ryan Blaney, really, really hard, got Blaney behind Newman, and that's when that crash happened. It slowed Blaney up enough that Hamlin could get through there. That's how you win the race now. And in the past, it was about timing. It was about positioning yourself in the right position to have one shot to do it. Yeah. But you didn't need like 3 or 4 cars or an entire lane to accomplish that. That's where the problem is right now. It's just that they're so jumbled up. They're so close. They're too close.
Yeah.
I don't know how you split them up.
So this kind of ties in with what the chat, someone in the chat just asked. How much do you think is etiquette driver-wise or the cars?
Well,
it's the cars.
It's a lot the cars. It's a Cordian effect.
Yep.
When there's crashes, but a lot of this is there is a lot of give and take for the first however long, and then all of a sudden you get within inside 20 laps and everybody goes crazy. I think Kyle Busch or Denny's or somebody said Logano tried to fit didn't know how wide his car was. Tried to fit it somewhere it shouldn't be. Chase Briscoe, who I'm a big fan of. I mean, he was kind of all over the place, jacked up as you mentioned, and you're gonna go for it, and you hope that it works out. Didn't that ARCA driver last year say, "I'm just gonna keep my foot in until I see God or the checkered flag"?
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of the mentality. Let me ask you this. Let me take it two different directions.
Sure.
One, I think the casual fan probably does like the Daytona 500 one because the casual fan probably likes chaos, probably likes crashes, probably likes the unpredictability of not knowing who's going to win that race. Even while they're down the backstretch, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 drivers that have a chance. We saw Helio run it. There's a chance maybe Scott Dixon runs it next year. Do you think seeing those crash? Remember Jimmy Johnson, the holdup with running the Indianapolis 500 was, my wife doesn't want me to do it. It can be unsafe. Do you think that this holds back maybe some other IndyCar drivers in the future of trying this? I mean, Helio was a pinball machine all weekend. I mean, it was bounce, 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 bounce. Catherine had a hard hit. You talk about some of these drivers that have the open wheel IndyCar experience. I love the crossover. I was cheering for Helio. I would love to see more drivers. I mean, I think seeing McLaughlin run a road course in a Cup car would be incredible. Joseph Newgarden running the 500 maybe. Dixon next year possibly with maybe Trackhouse. We'll see. But I mean, again, it's a crapshoot. It's the accordion effect. And when that race is on the line, who the real winner is in all of this is the spotters. I mean, the spotters deserve raises.
The spotter wins the Daytona 500.
Yeah, I mean,
put them on the
if
Harley
you heard
J.
the audio, I mean, and as somebody, I've spotted on the road to Indy, right? Nothing major, but still, I mean, that dude, there's just so much information, and there is a chemistry that has to be there. So shout out to the spotters, because you're right, that is what wins you the Daytona 500.
2 points. You made the first point, which is the casual fans like the Daytona 500. Mm-hmm. Absolutely correct.
Yep.
I think here's the problem with the Daytona 500. It has become the stereotype that the stick and ball fans think our sport is. Right? They think it's a big wad, it's all left turns, it looks like there's no skill. There is skill involved. Let me be very, very clear. I think we call it a lottery, we call it random. There is a skill to super speedway racing in NASCAR. Let's not beat around the bush. There is a driving skill, there is a talent, there is a skill set to that. As a race car driver, you have to come with some tools equipped, or at least learn those. But
wait, Ty Dillon's still going to ride. Anyway.
Well, that's the problem, though, is the perception. The perception as a football fan tuning, and this unfortunately is one of the first major races of the year, and I would say the first race of the year that casual sports fans pay any attention to. Yes. I hate to say it, but right now the Rolex or the Chili Bowl, they're not bringing in NFL fans, right? The Daytona 500 does. And so they watch it, and unfortunately, I think the Daytona 500 does a lot more harm than good to our entire sport, because you get those folks into the door, because you intrigue them, that you go, let's find you a sport after the NFL ends. And the first thing they get is the Daytona 500, and what is it? It's the worst aspects of our sport. It's cars that can't get away from each other. It's a complete random crapshoot. You can't find a star out of the Daytona 500. You can't focus. Like back in the day, you had Earnhardt, you had Gordon, you had Dale Jarrett, you had a lot of the guys up at the front that, 5 or 6 guys that people could latch onto, attach themselves to. It's so random now that you can't do that. You can't attach yourself to the drivers, so then you have to watch the race, but the race is mostly uninteresting because it's mostly fuel saving, and then there's cautions, there's no live pit stops, there's no real unpredictability from that standpoint, and then you get to the end of the race, and to your point earlier about the cautions, NASCAR doesn't even seem to know their own rules half the time. I think they took advice from the NFL. They're like, man, their officials suck. Let's make sure our officials suck too. But that's completely that's the one thing everybody hates about the NFL, right? If the NFL can just fix that, I think the NFL will be back to where it was in the mid-2010s, right? But that's the thing is right now, the Daytona 500 is probably the worst thing we could be showing a casual racing fan, because it reinforces all those negative stereotypes, and then it's just...
Is it though?
Yeah.
Because that NFL fan that is hurting for action, hurting for drama, hurting for chaos.
Well, they love the fact that...
contact. They love contact. They love the fact that somebody's going to get hit hard, They're not anymore, because there's safety issues and helmets and everything that have changed and evolved. But, I mean, you go back to what ESPN used to do on their Sunday highlights where they had, this guy got jacked up. Well, I think that casual fan who is coming off of the Super Bowl last week likes that contact, likes that drama, is ready, wants to see a crash. There are people out there that are the casual fans that aren't big fans. They want that drama. They want to see that wrecking. They want to see that wrecking at Daytona.
So here's the thing about the crashing, right? Ryan Preece, that accident is something we've never seen in a NASCAR race before. We've seen it in IndyCars before.
Yeah.
But we've never seen a
right in front of you
stock car.
Stingray
Rob had a very similar crash at Iowa
in your lap.
100%. But that crash sets an unrealistic expectation because they're not going to do that at Atlanta. They're certainly not going to do that at Martinsville, and they're definitely not going to do that at St. Pete when the Indy cars get going.
Well,
right?
Devlin tried.
Yeah, they've tried in the past, but they haven't quite done it yet. But that's what I'm saying. Even if you give the casual fan what they want, it's like someone tuning into a hockey game and saying, "I want to see a big bench clearing fight." I think that's the perception of what people want out of hockey. But I think a hockey fan would look at you and go, "The fight's the worst part about this whole thing. We want to see good competition."
Team USA the other day, there was 3 fights in the first 4 minutes. That's all you read about on X and on social media.
And what did the hardcore hockey fans have to say about that?
Oh, they didn't like the fights.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But I think the Daytona 500 for a fan after the Super Bowl that is looking for some drama, not going to watch whatever they've done with the NBA All-Star game, is going to say, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to watch Daytona. I want to see the crashes. Don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I want to see that drama, that carnage, and let's see what happens on that last lap, which is exactly what happened. It was an absolute crapshoot.
Kyle, you're the voice of the youth. I need to ask your advice here because something that I know Tony and I are coming from a perspective of is that we are older fans. We grew up when the Daytona 500 was, you could have a 5 or 6 car breakaway and it's all of your favorite NASCAR drivers running in a line, and then it's 5 or 6 guys settled the Daytona 500. The race was set up in a different way. It was a true 500-mile test. You had a pretty wide gap between the fastest car and the slowest car in the Daytona 500. Obviously you grew up in a slightly different time when the packs were much more,
this is
much
what you're
closer.
Used to.
This is what you're used to. So what do you think a modern NASCAR fan who maybe has no perspective from the past are they looking at what we're saying right now and going, what in the hell are you guys talking about? That was awesome at Daytona.
I think they might be, honestly. I mean, you have to think as well that NASCAR kind of changed when the next gen came around too.
Yeah.
What I grew up with definitely different than your opinion, but what I actually grew up with around 2010, 2009, wasn't that bad. It was inoffensive. It wasn't what it was in the mid-2000s, which peak super speedway racing probably was mid to late 90s to it probably died off around when the COT came out, right? So you look back at 04 when it's Tony Stewart versus Dale Jr., that was still great. But I don't know. There's a few different areas here to look at. I saw the clip on Twitter of, 2000 when they put all the wickers on the cars, and basically that's when they started fiddling with it, when Dale Sr. was yapping about them ruining the racing at Daytona. So you have that, and then you move to COT where the cars are huge and make such a hole and they get actual pack racing. And then there was tandems, and then the Gen 6, it sucked for a minute, and then they put the big-ass spoilers on them, and then they started killing people, or trying to. And then, I don't know, it's just it's changed so many times that we are pretty far away from what you're talking about. But even my generation probably hates this, because what I love was 2010, 2011, which is still already.
So you want the
much
tandem
different.
racing back?
I like the tandems. I like the drivers talking to each other. But I don't know. It was better in the 2010's probably better because the track was aging and handling, and it's just cool to watch. But I don't know. But there's probably fans younger than me that look at the Gen 6 racing around 2019, 2020 when they had those big ass spoilers and they could just have huge runs and do crazy stuff, that they probably miss that now. I don't know. The Gen 6 has made super speedway racing interesting, and it's in such a weird spot, right? But I bet here's the thing. Here's bottom line, it comes down to, I feel like most people in my age range probably loved that Daytona 500.
Oof.
There was
We're
that
done.
whole race.
It's it. Pack
that
up.
whole
It's
race,
over.
there was nothing. I I was complaining in the beginning because I'm, I would like to say that, I am probably the worst for this because I would say I'm an old soul where I was watching the first 20 laps of them going 3 wide and saying, this is stupid. Like, isn't a 500-mile race supposed to be an endurance race? Like, what are we doing? Why do we have a top lane 3 wide? But, like, they were 3 wide most of the race. They never did any of the fuel-saving stuff that all the kids complain about nowadays. Like, the winner, you didn't know who the winner was, and the guy from 6th on the back straight won. Like, it was pretty inoffensive, I think, to what it probably was. But, like you said, I agree with you on the standpoint that, like, it just felt like way too much of a crapshoot. Like, no skill was involved. Just right place, right time. It is what it was. Like,
I'll say this. I felt bad for Helio, as we mentioned. He was kind of a pinball. So, hey, Wendy's, if you want to come back for the Indianapolis 500 and set up a food stand inside the racetrack and sponsor him for the 500, I'm sure Helio would be a part of that. And I'll buy you your first burger out there. But
thank you.
Maybe we'll see Dixon run that next year. But are we over the Daytona 500 talk? Can we move on?
Can we talk about how the entire NASCAR fan base was hating on Helio?
Disrespect.
Yeah. The disrespect was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think we need to say hashtag not all right here, because I think there were a lot of people who, both in the media and in the fan base, that were excited to see Helio.
Yeah.
We're open to him doing. I mean, if Helio went out there and laid an egg and looked horrible, like, I could understand. But I think he was crashed into more than he crashed himself. I mean, I get it. He ran an in-lap on a broken toe link and crashed under yellow. Yeah. That was funny. We get it. He was okay. It's all good. But, at the end of the day, Helio's not the one who's forgetting to let off the gas after the checkered flag. Right? Like, I don't understand some of the hate. I do understand the issue with the 41st car, 37th provisional.
But not Helio's fault.
It's not Helio's fault. And here's the thing, too. If you're mad about a 37th provisional, why are you not mad about the other 36 provisionals? I mean, I think it's either you're mad about all of them or you're mad about none of them. To me, a big race, and not necessarily, I think this is a staple of American racing, quite honestly, is the fact that you have to earn your spot.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about sprint cars, whether you're talking about the Indy 500, whether you're talking about a local short track, you're talking about the Daytona 500, at least it used to be, there weren't a whole lot of, like, guaranteed positions. And even if you did earn a guaranteed position, you were high in points or you had a previous championship, something. But now it's just, you paid a certain amount of money and you get in the field. That, I think, I completely agree that you should be mad about that. But the fact that you're mad about Helio getting one, I don't know.
I think it kind of quieted down once we got to the duels and realized that Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s car were going to be in.
And Martin Truex.
And Martin Truex Jr. I think those were they wanted, NASCAR fans wanted to see Martin Truex, obviously wanted to see Jimmy Johnson back in there.
Well, then they should qualify for the race.
Well, and they for sure wanted to see Dale Jr.'s car in there, which I totally get, I totally understand. And most of the NASCAR fans are going, because I feel this way too. Look, I'm a huge Kyle Larson fan, but part of me was like, I don't want him to come over to the 500 and spank the field, because what's that going to say about the IndyCar drivers? And there was a lot of NASCAR drivers that were like, that Trackhouse car is probably pretty good.
Yep.
If Helio comes over here and finishes top 5 or top 10, what does that say? So, but I think once Dale Jr.'s car got in there and Truex and Jimmy Johnson, that a lot of those things, a lot of that noise kind of was silenced. But overall, I watched a lot of the races. It's funny. I was sitting there with a friend. And I was like, they're gonna wreck, and they did. And I was like, they're probably gonna wreck again, and they did. It's become predictable what's going to happen. The only thing that's not predictable about that race is who's going to win.
That's crazy. I do want to say this in defense of Helio. There was all this talk, even from, like, spotters who should know better, right? Like, they were saying Helio doesn't have any stock car experience. Well, I remember him winning a stock car race at Stafford Speedway 2 years ago, so maybe pay a little attention there. They say he has no stock car super speedway experience. That's a fault. That's a lie, because he ran IROC. And then he said that you have no close pack racing experience. Another lie. Have you seen an IRL race from about 2002 to about 2011? That's what they're doing with the next-gen car at 40 miles an hour faster than they were doing at the Daytona 500. So explain to me why Helio wasn't qualified to be in that field. That was crazy.
And that's why he ran the ARCA race, was to get more laps. And he finished
Where did he
well.
finish in that? Yeah.
Fifth,
and he pushed the
fifth.
winner. He pushed the winner to the win,
Yeah,
right?
his teammate.
Exactly. And you know what, Kyle? I think we've talked about.
He got hooked after the checkered. He got hooked.
Helio made one mistake in that race, and there were a couple of cars. I think it was, I can't remember. It was William Sawalich, I believe, made a move to the outside. Helio had a chance to move up in front of William Sawalich. And had he made that move, Helio Castroneves would have won the race because I think Sawalich would have pushed him past his teammate. And then with the ARCA cars, it's really hard to get a run.
Yeah.
So I think Helio could have won that race. And so what are we talking? Again, he wasn't the one who got run over. He wasn't the one who was causing any of the big crashes.
Yeah.
It's just so silly, and it's like little brother syndrome, and I don't understand because you got 1.8 million people to watch an Xfinity race on the CW. You ain't the little brother. Calm down.
Yeah. Which IndyCar would probably kill for those numbers to start the season on
yes.
Fox.
What'd they do on the CW with 100 Days to Indy?
Oof.
I mean, seriously, like what are we comparing here, right?
I wanted to change subjects here, something that we talked about on the teaser show last week.
Yep.
And that is Jay Fry and his departure from IndyCar. Jay Fry, as a member of IndyCar, did a lot of great things. I want people to remember that, as I know you're going to make some points on that as well. We heard Graham Rahal really go to bat for Jay Fry on Media Day. Mentioned some of the things that he's been a part of as far as look, the elephant in the room is going to always be, when's the new car coming? Is there going to be another engine? What's going to happen first? A third engine manufacturer comes in, or Honda exits stage right? That's been a question and a topic that's been brought up. But from my personal interactions with Jay, he's always been good to me. Always told me what I needed to know. And there's a lot of noise on why he was let go. I've heard 17 different reasons. Some of that I believe, some of that I don't. Some I know for sure, some I don't know for sure. But I think and Doug Bowles will be great. We talked about this. You and I are huge fans of Doug Bowles and what he's going to bring, not only continuing to bring to the Indianapolis 500, but to the IndyCar series as a whole as well. Although there probably is going to be some times where he's going to have to make some stern decisions and not be Mr. Nice Guy. But as far as Jay Fry goes, I think there was a lot that he did good for IndyCar and moving the sport forward.
So Jay, this is the thing that I think, and I'll admit right here that I don't think I did a very good job of explaining this in some of my content. So I'll explain it a little better here. I think Jay Fry really did not have the tools to do what he needed to do or wanted to do from about 2020 on.
Yeah. He was a bit handcuffed at times.
100%. Prior to 2020, do I agree 100% with every decision and direction that was chosen for IndyCar during the Jay Fry era prior to 2020? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I'll say this. Jay Fry had it pointing in a direction and had it going in a direction and had a plan, right? Jay talked about it a few times, I remember, in some press conferences. The plan that he had was to get the cost down, which he did with the UAK 18 Aero Kit, use that to bring more teams in. Did that. Yep. How many teams has IndyCar signed up since then? They haven't all stayed, but I think the numbers are somewhere around 6 or 7 new teams that have joined IndyCar since Jay Fry came into the building, and not many of them have closed. They've either, they've found some way to keep going, right, if they've come in. So Jay Fry did that. The only thing that he didn't do was get a third engine manufacturer. And ultimately, I think that's one of the things that ultimately, you mentioned those 17 things. Yeah. I think that's a pretty big buck stops with him moment, right? But I think the problem is that we have an altered perception of Jay in his time at IndyCar because of the fact that he has been handcuffed for so long. I think we almost forget a lot of the great things that he was doing. He was moving the sport forward during his time. And I look at the time, when I look at IndyCar and when I say, where was the real period of growth for me with IndyCar? It was like that 2015 to 2019 period. I really felt there was some positive momentum, the sport growing, and you know what? That's Jay Fry. Yeah. And I think we have to really give him a lot more credit than we're giving him. Was every decision perfect? No. But were there a lot more hits than misses during that time period where he really had kind of the authority to do what he needed to do?
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And I think to your point, we've talked about it a few times. The paddock pretty strongly in favor of Jay, generally speaking. Not saying they're not fans of Doug. I think, and this is the crazy thing about the Doug choice is that, and here's the thing too. I think in some ways the Doug choice is almost a shield from criticism, believe it or not. Consider that, right? We all like Doug. Obviously the media likes Doug. Doug has done an amazing job to get people on his side.
Yes.
1,000%. I almost think at times, though, and I'm worried this is going to happen throughout the season, when there are some things that we need to criticize about IndyCar. You mentioned the formula.
Yep.
I keep hearing the year 28, not 27, in terms of that, more often than not. We worry about Honda every day, right?
And the jury still is out on the hybrids. Look, I mean, what happened last year, and with Scott Dixon having to pull off for whatever reason that was, and Ed Carpenter's comments at Iowa, I spent $100,000 or whatever.
Most expensive 100 pounds.
100 pounds on my car.
Yep.
And we haven't even seen it in competition yet at the Indianapolis 500. We will in May. So, like you said, there was a lot. The timing was a little weird. I mean, a lot of us in the paddock had kind of gotten whiff of this possibly coming, for lack of a better term, and then we turned into 2025. It hadn't happened yet. Media Day, it hadn't happened yet, and then obviously it comes down last week. I think you're right with Doug Bowles. I think that it is a little bit of a shield to say, like, people like this guy, people respect him. I'm excited to see what Doug can do. I think IndyCar is in a very healthy place right now. The Indianapolis 500 has been healthy for a very long time,
and that's Doug.
And that's Doug.
IndyCar
now is healthy and getting healthier. You've got a new team coming in. We can sit and bitch all we want about car and engine, and we need more high-speed ovals, which I totally agree. I would love to go back to Michigan. I would love to go back to a Pocono or tracks like that. Kentucky. But I think IndyCar is at a point now where, with all the marketing Fox is doing, I mean, they're knocking it out of the park. Fox is, I'm not here to be all over Fox, but they have been. I haven't seen a lot from IndyCar. It's all been Fox. But I think heading into the season, I am excited about it. I'm excited about the 500. I'm excited to see the future. The competition level. Every drive, Will Power talks about all the time how great the competition level is. I would tend to kind of disagree with that, because at the end of the day, we've had the same Indy 500 winner for the last 2 years, the same IndyCar champion 3 out of the last 4 years, and outside of Andretti, McLaren, which I would put like here, and then Ganassi and Penske, only one other team has won since 2022, and that's Rahal with Christian Lundgaard, who I'm very excited to see what Christian Lundgaard can do in that McLaren car. We'll do a season preview type of show coming up next week to discuss that more. But, just to wrap up the Jay Fry thing, I think there was a lot that he didn't get the credit that he deserved for.
Let me ask you a question, because you brought up something that I think is an interesting point, and a point that we need to really hammer home. It's great that Fox is doing what they are doing right now for IndyCar. But I would say, I think the first point is, I'm going to give you 2 points here. First,
I know where you're going.
First few weeks, first few races, leading up to the Indianapolis 500, critical.
Yep.
We have just seen what the secondary NASCAR series could do on the CW, right? You're going to go directly up against NASCAR on Fox. TV rating, critical for the first few races, especially with the marketing push that they've had right now. Second point, is IndyCar relying too much on and they've done this before with NBC, I remember this exact same thing, relying too much on the TV provider to market the series for them.
Yeah. What have we seen besides Fox? We haven't seen much. We've seen a new app for the fantasy that's been met with some criticism and has been met with open arms by some. To your point, it is critical every race perform when it comes to the TV ratings, because you don't want to get to the end of the season and Fox is going, holy crap, we did all this, and this is the number that we got?
Yep.
Hello FS1 and FS2 for 2026. I think it's great that you're going to be able to watch all practices, qualifying, those type of things. Fox has done a great job, but you have to watch St. Pete, and you mentioned this. We were talking, I think, about the Daytona 24-hour ratings, that type of thing. I think
1 million people.
Yeah, St. Pete can get a good number. What I'm looking at is a race like Thermal or a race like Barber, where there isn't everybody. every advertisement you've seen right now, whether it was the Super Bowl, whether it was the pack you got in the mail that had Joseph on it. I love some of the outside of the box thinking that Fox is doing. However, I'm more interested. It's St. Pete. St. Pete's what you hear. Okay, so what about Thermal, which the All-Star $1 Million Challenge, whatever the hell it was last year, because nobody knew what it was. If that lays an egg, because it's probably not going to be the most exciting race. Barber can kind of be a snoozer. The Indy GP can certainly be a snoozer.
Oh, yeah.
Please turn.
We need sprinklers.
If it's sunny out there, put the sprinklers on the backstretch down home.
I'll go out there with a garden hose. I'll do it. Hey, Doug, I'll do it. I'll get that garden hose out.
I'll stand out there.
But I think
you have to have a good number. I mean, what's a good number? Is it 1.5 million for St. Pete?
Yes.
You taking that?
1.5. I think you want to be around where Mid-Ohio was, because I think it'll be leading into NASCAR, which is going to help you a lot.
Yep.
So the last IndyCar race that led into NASCAR was Mid-Ohio.
Yep.
That did about 1.5 million people. But here's the thing, Tony, and it's something that we harp on. We all harp on. Whether you're talking the media, you're talking drivers, you're talking fans. This is where the schedule is going to hurt them. Unfortunately, because you talk about that Thermal race.
Yeah.
And if that Thermal race is the week after St. Pete, I'm feeling a lot more confident than I am 2.5 weeks after St. Pete, which is where it is right now. I refuse to call it 2 weeks, but apparently 3 weeks isn't accurate to say either. So 2.5 weeks after St. Pete is Thermal.
There's accurate. We got to be accurate around here.
We got to get it right.
I don't want to get an X post that's like 9.
Oh, that's coming
pages
anyway.
long.
Don't you worry, buddy.
But what is that weekend? What is Thermal weekend? What big event that everybody loves that weekend? It's the opening round of the NCAA tournament you're going up against. Last year in Thermal they were doing, I remember driving through Palm Springs listening to one of the games. And look, you can't sit around and go, oh, well, we're going to move this. I mean, they've already proven that they don't want to go up against the NFL. Right?
So, and you can't with Fox.
And you
can't. You can't.
But, you can't go around and say, no, we don't want to go up against the Masters. We don't want to go up against the NCAA tournament. You kind of take what the schedule gives you and what Fox wants, and when Fox wants it. But I'm excited. I'm optimistic about it. But I'm also a realist. And if you lay an egg at St. Pete, I mean, what do you think is going to get the casual viewer to watch the first race besides Joseph as a little seaman running across the commercial? I don't know if that was the proper term or not.
That's crazy.
That's a crazy thing to say. I'm trying to think. Because
sorry, Alex Palou French kissing.
Well, I think that the ads are fine.
Yeah, no.
And here's the thing. I see this on Twitter a lot. I'm about to get in trouble.
I might have to stop you.
I'm not gonna. But here's the thing. I see some people complaining about the ads on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, you're gonna ruin it.
That's what the Zoomers want,
You're
right?
You're gonna ruin it.
Don't the Zoomers want
that
stuff?
They're spending so much. Like, I get it, man. I get it. Like, maybe it's not. Maybe the terminology used in the ad is not up to your personal stand.
Yeah.
Just cool it. It's okay.
It's been good.
So my question to both of you, I think, since you brought up, do you think the TV or IndyCar is letting the TV do, most of the work? What would you like? What would you like to see from IndyCar to do specifically? Like, what would you want them to do?
IndyCar. I've said this. This is the example that I've used. That you took me into a Lego store in Nashville, and I couldn't. I
did do that.
I couldn't get out of there quick enough.
It was educational.
But when you walk into a Lego store, which I'm not into, but adults build Legos, and a lot
so do kids.
You go in there, you see IMSA, you see NASCAR, you see Formula One.
And Formula E,
and
Extreme E.
And all that. Okay, you go into a Meyer location here locally in Indianapolis, you can get NASCAR cards, you can get Formula One cards, you can get, die-cast cards.
Many of the same Lego sets you saw in that Lego store in Meyer right
IndyCar's biggest problem is getting into households, which is having sponsors that are brand name. Having yourself inside of grocery stores with little cars, those type of things.
They've got shirts in Target.
And stores that aren't within 465, by the way.
They have shirts in Target, and then they had a shirt last year in one of the stores, because, I bought one from Hollister. It's the only thing I've ever bought in Hollister in my life. But they had one, and it said, Indy 1992 with Graham Rahal's, aero screen car. Even some of the shirts, it's like, wait a minute, I always said IndyCar needs a fact checker. They need somebody in that office that's fact checking everything.
Wow.
Hey, St. Pete TV channel, instead of saying, hey, this is the highlights from today's IndyCar practice and it's USF 2000, Just send them a highlight package of one of the practices, and maybe they do. I don't know. But there was just some things where you look at, and I've got a shirt that's got the 95 logo on it from Hollister. On the back, it's got Lion Dyke's 93 car. Now, the average person that's walking into Hollister probably has no clue and just thinks it's a cool shirt. But to the diehards like us, we kind of see that, and we're going to critique it. What would I like to see IndyCar do more? I'm going to give them some credit. They have been doing a lot of things. They're inside of Hollister. They're inside of Target now. They do have cards. We're waiting on a video game. But, I've always said this. When you go into markets, going to a local baseball game, a Rangers game, a Tigers game, whatever it is, great. Get into schools, hand tickets to practice days, get on local TV, get on local radio, embrace social media and those people that may want to interview or have a one-on-one with the driver. I know you hate the term influencers, but get people talking about it. Get a buzz going. There is a buzz around the Indianapolis 500. Everybody in the month of May gets into it, right? I get it. You're not. If you could copy and paste that at the other events, you certainly would. But I would like to see IndyCar, and I know they've moved some people around. Alex Dameron's been moved up, but let's get more mainstream. I mean, look, you saw at Daytona, the Rizzler was there. I saw more of the Rizzler at the Daytona 500. There was some
but that
comics
happens at
there.
the Indy 500 too.
But who?
Yeah, we
Who?
don't get. Okay.
We don't get
this
the
is
Rizzler.
This is hilarious
Who?
because like he's the Rizzler, right? But we don't even get like the height of the Rizzler.
Well, that's true.
On a social media front, right? Like,
Yeah.
sure, like a couple years ago we had Adam Driver, and like there's been a few years, like the one year we had Matt Damon, like
There was that guy who
It's
walked
few
in the
and far
pagoda,
there
right?
were there were a few years where we
It's-
had relevant like actors from big movies coming out, but like, man, like we do need the Rizzler show up. We need like that like
And when that person
mainstream
shows up,
TikTok, so reels, like what's trending in the time, right? Like we need the Rizzler guys.
And when those people show up, they need to be tweeting, hey, can you throw up an Instagram post? Hey, I mean, it's cool to be in a two-seater. That's badass. It's cool to wave a green flag and be close to those cars. I mean, one of the best things, if you're watching at home, what I've done, you've done it, is showing somebody a racetrack and an Indy car in front of you for the first time. It's mind-blowing. It's awesome. Have them posting about it. But it's just been too few and far between. I know that celebrities are not going to grow IndyCar overnight. I totally understand that. But having these people, I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. obviously was right on my wheelhouse last year. But
Nobody knows or cares who Ken Griffey Jr. is anymore.
I
hate
looked
to tell you that.
No, you're wrong, Mr.
Tony's mad.
Mr. If I could, I'd go back. Like, you live in the 80s and 90s. Like, what are you talking about?
No, I'll tell you, Aaron Judge. Aaron
Okay,
Judge
perfect.
should be the pace car.
Sure.
But here's the thing.
No problem with that.
I've heard two crazy things in the past.
Tom Brady. Oh wait, no, they would hate him because of Peyton Manning.
Oh, don't you worry. We're going to talk about Tom Brady here in a second. First of all, we need the Rizzlers crazy. But it's not as crazy as saying we need a fact checker on a show called Unverified.
Well,
that's crazy. Hang on a second.
I'm not an IndyCar employee, so I can say that.
You guys are over.
We are different than them.
You guys are overthinking it.
Can I get a billboard?
Hang on.
Can I get a billboard outside? Oh wait, that's what Mark Miles wants to do, and all we have is positive billboards.
Hang on, calm down. Listen. We don't need a fact checker. We don't need a billboard. We don't need the Rizzler. What was happening the last 2 days?
They need a fact checker.
Hang on. What was happening the last 2 days in IndyCar?
Testing at Sebring.
Did you see any content coming out of it? The only person making content was Marshall Pruitt because he was there for himself. What is going on? Why is there no... This is the first time the full field has been on the racetrack since Nashville of last year.
Yep.
Where is the content? And I'm talking... I get it. It is... Let me say this because I know because we're doing it right now. It is a pain in the ass to do a live show.
Yep.
But you have a production company.
Yep.
You have that under the tent.
Yep. What a great way to grow your YouTube channel is by streaming live.
You don't have to do a full production of you don't have to run cameras and all that around the track, but have a couple cameras set up.
Yep.
Have Hinch and Will Buxton go there and just host a live show. When a driver comes off the track, grab them, bring them over, talk about the lap times. These are things that it's. I don't want to say it's simple.
On Monday, it was cold outside. They were looking for something to watch.
I don't want to say it's simple because it's not. It's complicated. It costs money. But when the cars are on the racetrack, and it is so limited now, we have got to be pretending like that is the biggest freaking thing in the world. And what happened at Sebring? crickets. We got a couple of timesheets, and I don't even think did they even stream the timing and scoring for the fans?
No.
They had a bug with it on Monday, I believe. I think they eventually maybe got it. I don't know. How about sending some people down there that cover your sport and saying, "Hey, we'll help you out. Come down here. Let's make this the kickoff. Let's make this." I mean, the Roar
media day there.
Make it almost what the Roar is. The Roar.
Oh, yes.
I also want to point out that like the spring training idea is great, and it's crazy because like we used to do that, right? Like, Like I remember a few years growing up.
Thermal.
What's funny is like I'm really young, but I've been a fan of IndyCar, like following it completely for about 10 or 12 years now, and like through the phases, I can remember 2017, 16, and even 15 and 14, where like not only the practice sessions were free on YouTube. I understand why that's not a thing anymore, but also like they would go do spring training at Phoenix, and even though it was one guy on the roof, like I was getting excited when it was cold outside, and I could just watch the new season's IndyCars racing around Phoenix, and it got me like excited.
That was in that growth period I was talking about, by the way, when it was like when IndyCar was like ramping up, and like I was noticing, wow, that was when I started my YouTube channel focusing on IndyCar, because I was confident. I'm like, oh, my favorite thing is going somewhere. Yeah. This is moving forward. There are young people learning about this, and that's what's missing right now. And that's what frustrates me a lot. What's frustrating?
They shoot holes in the boat a lot, and there's plenty of examples that we can get into. And it's probably why Marshall Pruitt was down there this weekend, because he thought, well, nobody else is going to be there, so I'm going to be one of the only people producing content. Now, with TikTok and YouTube, IndyCar has done a great job, I think, over the off season of having some things and uploading old races now that they have those.
But it's only old races on YouTube.
They're getting better.
Yeah,
they're getting better about it. I saw an original video posted the other day where they went through the drivers' old tweets on their Twitter and had them react to it. Like they're getting better at doing the thing.
It's a lot of what they recorded at Media Day, and it was original, and it was fun, and people like that. All good. I have no problem with that. But like you said, it could be a spring training type thing. Send some media people down there to cover it. I don't know. It's.
Hey Kyle, how many views did Formula One get on their team unveil?
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
Kyle, bring that up.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that up. I was just about to bring that up. Actually, while we're talking about marketing and preseason things, they did that today. Did any of you watch it? And what did you guys think? Because I'm not gonna lie, I skipped through it and only watched like a couple of the unveils, because each team had like a dedicated video for their launch that was very precise to like their branding and what they're trying to like portray themselves at. And it made me realize, like, man, like F1 is so big right now because not only the drivers, every team has a brand and personality to work and build off of. Like, they have done such a good job at branding that like even the teams have their own personality. Like, it's crazy.
Well, like wearing nowadays, I was looking at like some of my hats that I own, and I own like an Alpine hat, and I looked at that and I said, that's like, what's so weird now is wearing an Alpine logo or a Haas logo, or obviously like Ferrari or Red Bull. It's like wearing a Tigers hat or a Mariners hat, or it's like wearing a hat from a different sports. But you never see someone wear just a Team Penske hat unless they were getting free tickets from Marlboro, right? Like that's you're just not going to see that, and that takes time to build. Let's be very clear. Yeah. We're not expecting the moon right now, but you look at what Formula One is doing, and they're producing content to engage their fans in the sport when things are not actively happening. And I think that's what you have to do.
To your point, I mean, Nashville was what, 6 months ago? I mean, you said it from as soon as we drove back from Nashville. Oh, we got a 6 month off season. 6 month off season.
The non-racing season.
Or the non-racing season, excuse me, as they pub it.
That's the correct terminology.
I don't know. The content day, I would have loved to do some more individual sit-down with drivers and have some of that content to maybe play back on this show or to play back on my podcast or my social media, but it was just kind of a driver walks up, you can ask questions, and you can go back on the media site and get it. I like to talk more personally with these drivers about things. But, maybe going down to Sebring would have been productive. I don't know. But, man,
I'll tell you what. I'll go down to Sebring when they're running a new car. That's when I'll be going to Sebring.
So
on my own dime.
I'll go down to Sebring if they pay for they put me.
I'll be in Sebring for IMSA.
So last thing on this, I did look it up.
Yes.
I cannot see the live viewers after the live stream.
Oh, okay. What's the number though?
But they put up a freaking highlights package of this thing, and the highlights package of it got 94,000 views. So that's something.
Those are CW numbers.
Last thing on like marketing and IndyCar that I want to say, and especially with original YouTube content, is you're right. It's a lot of in the off season, just the
just
classic
stoke the
races.
fire a little bit. Just stoke.
I think like the thing that I would take from F1 and just literally copy are all, and me and you have talked about this, all the videos, all the historical videos F1 puts out. It's like every day you'll see, and they've gotten so like specific in those countdown videos.
Is that because F1 hires people that knows the history of racing?
Well, that's a start, but I mean, there has to be a team of people working on these videos because they come out every like day. It feels like of the most random topics.
And you can binge watch them.
But like IndyCars, I mean, they've done some of them like maybe a long time ago, but like there's so many moments throughout the history of the sport that like those videos would be timeless. And like you look, like you and I have made those videos that have gone viral.
The biggest video ever on my channel is a top 10 list for IndyCar.
Yeah,
biggest video ever.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I think that they could do.
I mentioned this last week when we kind of did a small run through of this show. I think the 2025 season is one of the most important seasons that we're going to see in IndyCar because you have to deliver for Fox. All of your races are on network TV. It is on Fox. We have a new team in the sport. The Indianapolis 500 is as healthy as it's been, and you have to deliver. You have to. We're going to look back at this and say, well, they fumbled that bag, so that's what put them on FS1, or they lost this sponsor, whatever it is. You can kind of look around and say, well, the CW was who picked up the 100 days to Indy, and that's gone. Mm-hmm. They have a sports card, which I collect and enjoy, but that's not a huge name brand.
It's just not in the big stores yet. Yeah,
this new app that we have to run your fantasy squad on. Not a lot of people know of. It's not a household name like a DraftKings or a FanDuel or Prize Picks, those type of things. And if they want to partner with these that they grow them, maybe that's what they're looking for. But it kind of just shows you maybe where it's at. And this is a great opportunity to attract sponsorship. You have money now. We've heard a lot of people in the past say, oh, well, we don't have the budget. Marketing, we don't have the money for that. Well, now you got some money from Fox. This is a time to, like you Zoomers say, full send it. Full send this. Let's make IndyCar great again.
Hey, speaking of sponsorship and potential lack thereof,
I know where you're going.
Big story that I will look into the camera because there might be somebody watching that is going to call me out for this. I don't understand 1,000%, but it sounds like Connor Daly might be having some issues with sponsorship right now, specifically Polka Dot, which was a major sponsor of his last year. I know you've been kind of keeping track of this story.
Yeah.
I do not understand how this is working. Can you explain it somewhat in layman's terms about what's going on with Connor right now?
Well, I don't know too much about the whole meta universe. I don't think it's a Bitcoin or online, that type of stuff. I'm not educated about that, and maybe I'm the problem. Maybe Polka Dot has said we didn't get enough ROI and people looking us up, learning about us, talking about us. Everything that Polka Dot and Connor have done back and forth over the last couple of months of trying to get a sponsorship for the season, trying to get a sponsorship for 5 races, the value has gone down every time that they've asked. That's all public. That is all out there. Okay, it's been sent to me. All the conversations, the contract, even last year was public. Usually, a lot of that stuff just stays private, and you never really get a chance to glimpse at it.
That's something that Polka Dot prides themselves. I do know this. Yeah. That's something that Polka Dot prides themselves on, is being very open and transparent with what they're doing and the relationships they have, because they are very much focused on creating like a network of folks who buy into Polka Dot. I do know that.
And it is a network. And in any network like that, you have what some people call your sharks, which probably have more pull. Maybe you put more money in early, maybe own the most of this. I think it's a Coinbase. I really don't know. And that's probably the problem. Yeah. As somebody who likes and supports Connor, maybe I didn't dive into Polka Dot a little bit more to learn that. Maybe, collectively as a fan base, we didn't do that. With that being said, it seems like somebody who has a lot of that power and that pull said, no, we're not going to do this, while a lot of people underneath really wanted to do this, saw the value in Connor Daly, saw the value in Connor Daly's social media, saw the value in Connor Daly leading the Indianapolis 500, having a white and pink car that looked great, having Connor's social following. Look, I've done deals with Connor before when it comes to autograph session, sponsorship, that type of thing. Connor knows a lot of people. He is very much a personality, has a podcast, as we know. I would say this, and I've defended this, and there's a lot of people that have came after me by saying, oh, well, the results for Connor aren't there. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Connor doesn't really wreck cars, okay? And he obviously was pretty pissed when Ed Carpenter let him go at the end of the 2023 Indianapolis 500. Connor doesn't wreck cars. He's fast. He can bring, and Juncos Hollinger Racing needs sponsorship. And I don't know why last year they didn't really have a lot of sponsorship. Maybe there was just money coming in from Augustine Canapino and they didn't need it. If you can't sell Grosjean, I mean, he's got a lot of followers, Formula One background. Connor gave this team their only podium, their best career finish, their best career run in IndyCar. Connor is good on the ovals. He can continue to get better on road and street courses, which, I mean, you think about, he could have won Detroit a couple years ago, but back in 17 or 18. I hope Connor stays in the car, because now the conversation has turned to, well, he didn't get that polka dot money, and all we've heard is Juncos Hollinger and Brad Hollinger is starting to want some of that money back that he has invested, because we haven't seen sponsorship. He probably hasn't seen ROI on that. I hope that Connor's in that car throughout the entire season. If not, bare minimum the ovals, because if there's 33 on the entry list and you're a car owner that's looking for money, you maybe say, well, we're going to put somebody in there that can sign us a check, because he's not going to get bumped. Now, if there's 34, 35 cars, which we don't know what's going to happen, we'll talk about that. I would keep Connor in there, because Connor can race, can qualify into the show, and then can race his way up, as we've seen the last couple of years.
Connor's best at your most important race, which I think is key. Another key that you brought up.
And there's more ovals, which he's good at.
Well, and you talked about the struggles of Juncos with sponsorship. That was a big issue. I think a lot of people forget what a big issue that was last year, and what a huge service Connor did to that team by putting that 78 car on the podium at Milwaukee, launching them well up into the leader circle. I think Connor earned himself that job then. Yeah. And quite frankly, I think there's going to be a here's where the loyalty is going to be tested, I would say, between Juncos and Connor, is if he doesn't have the sponsorship to bring, how long do you stick with him? I think you have to stick with him at least through the Indy 500 if there is a question of money. Now, we know Stingray's bringing some budget. Obviously, Connor earned some money from the Leader Circle payout that he earned through his podium at Milwaukee. So how much, the question is going to come down to how much money do they have to cover Connor for how long, and can they generate a sponsor in this lead up to the Indianapolis 500? And to maybe a point we made earlier, want to go back to television? Those TV ratings are going to be pretty damn important leading up to the Indianapolis 500.
I think overall there is a sponsorship problem inside of IndyCar as an entire series, as we've seen. A lot of it is B2B deals. A lot of it is this driver can sign the check and put himself in this car. There's not a lot of sponsorships inside the sport that you can kind of go out and, support, really, if you think about it. There are a couple, but consumer type of products. What I would say is, and I'm not very happy with Juncos Hollinger Racing. We can get into that another time. I think bare minimum you keep Connor in there for the ovals only. I don't think you can go out and get somebody that's going to be able to perform on the ovals like Connor can. Now, if you're looking for some money and you say, hey, we've got to fill this gap that we thought Polka Dot was going to be able to fill, then maybe you go out and get somebody for the road and street courses. Maybe, somebody who has money. The Fittipaldis were rumored throughout the offseason to possibly land a ride, that type of thing. But I think if you, as a race team, if you want the best results, bare minimum on ovals, it's having Connor Daly in that car.
I would agree. But as you so astutely said, the problem with, and we even talked about this in NASCAR to tie back the beginning of the show, it so often comes down to money. It's not about the best driver. It's not about what's best for the sport.
It's no longer about talent, mostly.
But I guess that kind of moves us into the next and final topic, the Indy 500.
Yep.
Because there was a point, and I think a lot of us on the inside, I suppose we could say, who have sources who can, kind of talk about these sort of things throughout the off season. Boy, the non-racing season.
Yes.
Through the non-racing season.
Put $1 in the jar.
I know, I gotta go to the swear jar. We talk about the Indy 500 entry list, and there was a point where I'm thinking, hell yeah, we're going to get 36 cars.
Yep.
The conversation has shifted.
Yep.
We're talking 2 3s right now, and obviously one program hasn't been announced yet that you were pretty sure, and to be honest, I was pretty sure. A lot of people within the sport were pretty sure was going to get announced. It hasn't yet. What's going on, Tony?
Well, things do change. I think in IndyCar, it's a lot about owner wants this money, sponsors only willing to bring this, and it's a lot of moving pieces. And when you're trying to get 3 to 4 different people into a room to discuss what the future looks like in running an Indianapolis 500 entry, it does take a lot. And I mentioned about a month ago now something that had been talked about, that there was a possible. I never said it was happening. I said it's linked. Possibly happening. We will see.
Unverified.
It was unverified, but all good. I trust 100% who told me is that we were going to have what would be a 4th entry at Ganassi with possibly Sebastian Bourdais in that car, Tom Brady, and Jimmy Johnson alongside part of the ownership with Chip Ganassi. Now, if the money's not there, the sponsorship's not there, things change. I mean, this is what happened a couple years ago when dude at the radio network got all up on me because we thought Andretti and Zach Veach wasn't going to find a ride, and Marco was going to be on the outside, and Gamebridge came in. Things change. Discussions change. I'm still not going to rule out that it's not going to happen because there still is a chance. We will see. But we're at 33 right now with obviously the confirmation of Renus, which you kind of knew was going to happen. The other possibilities out there would be, is Rahal going to run a 4th? And everything that I've heard over the last couple of weeks is that it's not going to happen. Yep. And then is Dale Coyne capable of running a 3rd car, which he is capable. There is probably a Honda engine out there. Catherine Legge has money. There is an available chassis. A lot of those able people, workers, could probably come over and field that. The resources are there. It's about, do you want to run that car? Do you want to run a 3rd car at Coyne or a 4th at Ganassi or Rahal? Obviously, Takuma Sato's name should be mentioned in this. Obviously, Catherine and Takuma are always linked to Honda engines, as we know. But I think there was a lot of drivers. Whether they were the drivers that we just mentioned or drivers that we haven't mentioned that probably were inquiring or have been about that Ghost Hollinger Racing entry and what's going on with Connor. Is Connor going to stay? And I think tomorrow he's going to talk about it on his podcast. But again, if I'm with them, and bare minimum, I want Connor in there on the ovals. But right now we're at 33, and maybe that's where the series as a whole wants to be. You don't got to worry about bumping. You don't got to worry about an entry being let go. I know you love bumping. I understand it.
You've got to get me up on the chip here, right?
I mean, I like bumping. I want to see a new pole record, but that's just kind of not in the cards. So we're at 33, so all the traditionalists are going to get their 33. We don't have to worry about that. And at this point, once you get to 33, these owners with these possible extra entries are going, is it worth it? I could miss the show. I could miss the show and not get that sponsorship check that I thought I was going to get. I could miss the show and have a wadded up race car at the end of that Saturday or Sunday qualifying. Or I could make it into the show, have that sponsorship money, and then I'm only getting, $330,000 for my entry as a one-off at the Indianapolis 500.
The real bump day right now happens in the boardroom. It's about, can I get an engine? Who's going to pay for it? And now we're at the point where we're talking about, one of the 33 cars the driver might not have sponsorship, so we're just going to bump him out with that. That sucks. First, that just sucks. We need to I don't know how we fix that problem. We got to fix it because, to your point, You look, bump day we need. Hold on, I'm not going to let you get off the hook about Tom Brady here.
Okay,
you kind of wanted to get away from it. I understand.
No.
But no, here's the thing.
I've been ripped for it. All these people are going to come after me.
I'm going to tell you that they shouldn't rip you for that because
nobody's denied it.
Nobody has denied it because what I understand
maybe I'm a year
is
too
going
early.
on with that is that there was too high of an ask from one of the partners involved.
Yep.
The budget didn't line up
Yep.
with the expectations of what a 2-week Indy 500 program is, and that's where things have stalled. I think the real question, because I'll put it this way, I have no reason to believe that this was not something that was talked about.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Jimmy Johnson, Chip Ganassi, Sebastian Bourdais. I think all of these things, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. If you look at Sebastian Bourdais, he's one of Joda Sport's drivers.
Yep.
Well, the owner of Joda Sport just bought into Jimmy Johnson's NASCAR team. Sebastian Bourdais drives for Joda Sport. Tom Brady is one of the sponsors and partners at Joda Sport. All of these entities, Joda Sport just bought the Cadillacs that Chip Ganassi runs or was running in the World Endurance Championship. Joda's now running those.
Yep.
There's a lot of connections between all those things. Sebastian Bourdais used to run for Ganassi in sports cars just a year ago. Chris Wheeler. All of these different people who are... It makes a lot of sense. It was talked about. But I think the real question is not so much that it isn't happening or whether it was legit or not. Why isn't it happening? And why wasn't that put across the start-finish line? Because if it doesn't happen, it's not so much a reflection of, Tony Donohue was wrong. To me, that's not the headline.
Yeah.
The headline is, how does that bag get fumbled?
Yeah.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
But how do you have this broadcast partner in Fox, someone who that broadcast partner is paying $100 million a year to call football games, and you can't get him associated with one of the biggest teams in the Indianapolis 500 with Jimmy Johnson, who's a huge name.
Yep.
Just all these things could have lined up, and I get it. These things are difficult to get across the finish line, but I think there is a question raised. If it doesn't happen, why didn't it?
Yeah, and I agree.
Especially when we're only talking about 33 cars.
Well,
you're just really kneecapping yourself then.
Okay, so if you're an owner and you've got a chance to run another entry, you take the risk of bumping one of your other cars out.
Sure.
I think I honestly believe, and this is not a knock on anybody that's on that race team, but we've just seen how they've qualified. I think if you're Ray Hall, despite the fact that Catherine safely qualified in a fourth car for Ray Hall 2 years ago, Sato was in the top 12 in qualifications last year. I think you're going, I'm risking knocking out one of my full-time drivers with this one-off entry. You're right, though. Why didn't this get across the finish line? Why wasn't Tom Brady involved? I mean, look, if Tom Brady and Donald Trump are there, who's going to get booed more at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? That's a topic for another day.
Is there a prop bet on that?
But, it would just add to that broadcast element. We have a Super Bowl champion. We're diehard Colts fans in this room. Besides Kyle, he's a Browns fan, so you know how much disappointment he is in the NFL world. Not that
thanks, man.
He's not a disappointment to us, but a disappointment
thanks,
to his
man.
fandom is.
Thanks.
But having Tom Brady there and just that brain, and you worked a 7-time thing in with Jimmy Johnson, and hey, you're an owner now. You're part owner. What have you learned? Take us down. What have you learned being on the pit box? What have you learned being in these engineering meetings? I don't know. It would have been. I think it would have enhanced the broadcast. It would have enhanced the excitement. Not saying it's not going to happen, but we're getting deeper. I mean, there's been Indy 500 entries that have been announced. In March there has been, but we're what are we 2 months away from that open test, and you kind of got to get it rolling if it's going to happen.
I'll put it this way, Tony. I think there's a better chance that you're going to still see the fourth Ganassi car, but it might not be this partnership. I think that's what we might be headed to right now.
Then who would it be? Because we know Sato's got money and probably an engine. We know Catherine Legge has money and probably an engine. I don't think that's probably going to necessarily happen. But is there anybody else? Is there anybody else that you can see?
I'd run it back with Takuma.
I
mean, yeah. I mean, if we're looking at it from an objective standpoint, I think if you're the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar, you might look at man, that ELF activation was really awesome, and Catherine Legge in a car that's capable of winning the race would be a storyline. But, if I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint as a racing team, and I need this car to be competitive and have a capability of winning the Indianapolis 500. There's no reason I wouldn't look at Takuma Sato as probably my first pick in the draft, so to speak. I don't know who else you could really... I mean, what's weird about having 27 full-time cars now is that you don't really have that pool of drivers anymore for the Indianapolis 500. And that's what's weird now.
Well, and I think, to your point, and kind of what you mentioned with Catherine, is you've had this great activation with Elf last year. You had Elf basically a store inside of Pagoda Plaza over there in the Midway. And you're not going to have... You have a lot of momentum. You have a lot of female momentum in the sport, as we see almost every day. And Elf has been a partner not only of Catherine's, but of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. How are you going to spin that she's not on the entry list if she doesn't make it to the entry list?
I remember the reaction. What was the last year that didn't have a woman? Was it 21, I think?
Was Simona in 21?
Simona was 22.
22, so then 2021.
So it was 2021. And I remembered it was a pretty negative reaction. I mean, it was the vocal minority. Let's not beat around the bush. I don't think there's that many people who are that invested on what the gender of the drivers is.
Yeah.
I think we just care how many of them there are. You know what I mean? But I think there is a pretty strong fan base. You see it. I mean, whoever the female driver is, and sometimes it's multiple female drivers, they sell a lot of merchandise. They have a lot of attention. They get one of the biggest cheers when they're introduced at the Indianapolis 500. So it's important that they're there for sure.
So you mentioned, Kyle asked, what could an IndyCar do in the offseason? Catherine Lang on her own was on the Drew Barrymore show last week. Do we have an IndyCar driver on one of those Fox shows during the week, next Monday or Tuesday? Do we have somebody on whatever FS1 daily sports show is? That's an opportunity right there to use your partner to promote your race, to promote that it is on Fox. So that's, Kyle, when you asked earlier, it was a great question, was what more can IndyCar do? That's certainly something right there. Fox has their daily shows. I can't tell you off the top of my head what they are.
Speak Out or something? Speak
Well,
Up?
FS1,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Skip Bayless could yell at you.
That guy who looks like that Penguins YouTuber guy.
Oh, yeah.
Or Steve Aoki.
Yeah,
he looks like all those guys combined. I don't know his name, though.
Real quick, before we wrap up, I know we're way over, which is totally fine. That's why we're live.
We're giving you free football. We're going into overtime, race fans.
Appreciate the interaction. Please like and subscribe on all social media, especially here on YouTube to watch every Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern. I want to thank our friends at the shop. We are all, as Kyle would say, swagged and dripped out. You can use our promo code right there, unverified15. They have an awesome new shirt. Doug Bowles is my president. They're going to have new drops for the Indianapolis 500 every Friday leading up to the Indianapolis 500 at the end of May. I've seen a few of them. I think I've showed you. Some of them look awesome. I know you've got your green shirt on. I got my blue.
Let me say something about... Can I say something about the green shirt real quick?
Yes.
Because green's not really my color, but it's the color of the Indianapolis 500 this year. And it's something that's interesting that I think that I don't remember ever a time where the Indy 500 logo has been green. Green for the longest time was an unlucky color in racing, and I'm leading around to this because I'm going to give everybody a depressing stat. The first green car to win the Indianapolis 500 was Jimmy Clark in the Lotus Ford in 1965. We, in 2025, as of this Indianapolis 500, are as far away from Jacques Villeneuve's win in 1995 as Jacques Villeneuve was from Jimmy Clark's win in 1965. There's your stat.
Yeah, that was kind of like what I mentioned with Scott Dixon starting and winning an Indy Lights / Next in 2000. That was 25 years ago. That's 2050. But check out the shop. They're going to have some awesome stuff. We really appreciate their support. We've got so much more to announce to our audience. We're going to have a lot of interaction as far as games. I've got some big stuff coming up.
Tons of interest, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in May that's certainly coming up. May's been a little bit easier to sell than the remainder of the season.
Wow, really? Can't believe it.
But I'm excited for it. Kyle's, we appreciate him. He done great work this week with the graphics, with the social media post, getting everything out there. I'm the only one in the room going to St. Pete. I mean, I'll be here next Tuesday, but I'm the only one going to St. Pete next week.
Yeah, we're going to have that. I think we're going to have that discussion next week.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got some things with the DL 500 Club I'm going to be doing for that. And I think it'll lead into a larger discussion about IndyCar and media and what's valuable and what's not. But I'll tell you what, Tony, I think this has been awesome. I mean, thanks to everybody both on the Unverified channel and on the David Land channel. This was a simulcast. I mean, this is something, I'll tell you what, it's crazy that we were able to pull this off again. Huge props to Kyle. Huge props to Rico Elmore, the owner of Fatheads Eyewear, who got us the studio and
nice
was
glasses.
And check out the glasses. We've got the link down in the description to Fatheads. I think they make me look good. And if they make me look good, you're definitely going to look good in them. That's for sure. But I mean, seriously, it's an amazing thing that we've been able to pull off here. I hope folks have enjoyed it. And we're going to be doing it every week at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. That's pretty wild.
It's been a long time coming. I know you've got some great content coming up on your channel over the next couple of days and weeks. Obviously, I'm still going to continue to do the Tony D podcast. But yeah, I mean, this is something that you and I have discussed. I shot Rico a text right away. He's like, I got a studio. Let's make it happen and bring in some partners together, and we'll announce some more things. But I know some people, and we'll never be able to hold a candle to these guys, but a lot of people have mentioned wind tunnel and kind of bringing that back a little bit. And obviously Robin Miller was one of my mentors. I met him at the age of 3, and he's helped me out through my days when I was at 1070 The Fan and JMV, and what I've learned from JMV throughout all this and the background that we have. I mean, my first gig was writing for Thomas Schechter's website, so yeah, it was a lot of dropped half shaft recaps, but
sure.
We still love that. I did want to mention this, and I know it probably doesn't matter to most people, but it's been asked. The Coke 600 this year is on Amazon Prime, so the Indy 500 will be re-aired on Fox 59 afterwards. But that's all I got. I'm ready for next week to discuss some of our predictions for the 2025 season, who we like, who we don't like. Hopefully Juncos keeps Connor Daly in the race car. I know there wasn't a lot of individual talk about drivers throughout this show, but we're certainly going to have plenty of opinion for you. We love the interaction. That's why Kyle is here, is to kind of be your voice, and Kyle's his own voice to give us a little bit of a taste of what it's like looking at racing from a different perspective of our younger generation, that IndyCar, that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and racing in general is trying to grab onto. What do you say?
Boomers. Yeah, you had to get it in there. I mean, we've been talking about Zoomers this entire
I said it
time.
earlier.
Man, we got Zoomer. We got one Zoomer. We got one Boomer. We're good. And I'm kind of in the middle. It's weird. It's weird. No, it's been fantastic. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate you guys so much. Tuning into Unverified. We're going to keep pushing forward. I think this is only going to go up from here. So we appreciate you guys being in on the ground floor. Bit of a longer show than we're expecting. I think this is probably going to be about an hour each week, but we figured we'd give you a little something extra for joining us the first time. So for our producer, Kyle Cuthbertson, for Tony Donohue, I am David Land, and this is Unverified.